Hi, and welcome to this edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry Dasilva, and it's always a pleasure when we have guests return to pay us a visit, whether in studio or via satellite, or in this case, on the phone. We have our good friend who joined us about a year and a half ago, a singer, actor, Mel Carter, who's joining us from out in California. When Mel was here the last time, he had a new CD that had just come out called Mel Carter Continues. And Mel, again, is always busy and always up to new things. And we welcome to Studio 411, a return visit, Mr. Mel Carter. Mel, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Larry? It's good to be back.
Absolutely. That sounds like a song to me, Mel. I don't know.
Yeah, a returning engagement.
I saw a couple of clips, and I must say, I shamelessly sometimes will borrow a line of questioning based on something I hear or read, which I think is always a good thing to convey to the viewer. But there was a thing recently that I guess when you were a young man and from your days when you were on Sam Cooke's label and you had a hit record, I want to say circa 1962, you were asked if kind of life changed, or if maybe the pressures or different things, the vices that sometimes come with success happen. And I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you remember the story, but you told a story, I guess, how your mom kind of set you straight, and it involved taking out the trash. Do you remember that story?
Yes, we were living in Hollywood then, and I had When a Boy Falls in Love was just beginning to hit, and it was the garbage. I hadn't set the cans out. My mother woke me up, right, to take the cans out and pour the garbage pan. And the guys came around and said, Mel, you're a star. You shouldn't be setting cans out. My mother said, no matter who you are, you're going to put the garbage out.
That's right. That's right.
To keep you level-headed.
I'm sure you probably worked with this young lady when she was very young. As a matter of fact, I think she was underage. Lala Brooks. I'm guessing you might have worked with her maybe on the old Dick Clark Caravan shows. But Lala Brooks was with one of Phil Spector's bands, and she told a story one time about how, I guess, she kind of snapped at someone just a wee little bit, and her mother, I guess, kind of in very short order set her straight and told her, if you do that again, ever, I mean, she meant ever, even when she was 80, that she would never be allowed to go out on tour, because in those days, because she was underage, she had to have, parental or some sort of mentorship on the road with her. And I always remember that story, and it's a good thing. A lot of times, grandmothers, mothers especially, they know how to keep you in line. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, my mom was my best friend.
There you go.
I miss her very much, but she kept me level-headed all the time.
Now tell me, since we last visited, Mel Carter Continues, the CD, which again I still play it all the time, has been doing well for you. And now, do we have some other projects in the works? Perhaps another CD down the short pike?
What I'm attempting to do now is finish up the music for the show, the Legends of Rock and Roll, the Balladeers. There was such a successful stint when we went to Vegas to do the excerpts from the show, and I just at first it was more people that were involved, but when Lenny and I got together and did the excerpts, it just put a thought in my head that we could go on and do this, as a duo, and make it happen. Make it happen. So that's what I'm working on right now.
There you go.
Looking for a concept for the next album that we're talking about.
Well, I know you've done some other ones too. You did one before. Again, we got a chance to know you and have you on the show. So again, your stuff, and I think I'm paraphrasing a quote that I heard you say, is that you do songs that, besides the ones, of course, you write, which are usually 4 or 5 on a CD, is that you do songs that are not the American songbook. They're part of the songbook. It's just not the Gershwins and the Harold Arlens and the folks that are the ones that come right to mind. You do ones that are certainly worthy of being in that.
They're standard.
Yeah.
But they aren't the standard material that everybody records over and over and over and over and over.
Right, right.
But they are standard material, and that was part of the trilogy. The first CD was The Heart and Soul of Mel Carter, and then Mel Carter, The Other Standards, and then Mel Carter Continues. And hopefully I'm going to keep continuing to do that, and plus getting a lot of notification on my writing. That's funny because all the time the B-sides of the singles that I had were songs that I had written, but I was never considered, a writer, songwriter. But now I'm getting that kind of recognition. Oh, your songs are so great. I said, wow, I thought they were great a long time ago.
Well, let me ask you this, and I have to admit, of course, I knew you for, 2 or 3 of your bigger hits, of course, Hold Me, Thrill Me, et cetera, back in '65, a #1 sellers we've talked about on this show, and several others. But, I was not aware that you were writing. I mean, again, the B-sides or not. Obviously, different artists have different things. Some just use the B-side back in the day for, kind of a throwaway, maybe their weakest song, which to me, when you only have 10 or 12 songs, really none of them should be weak. You know what I mean? They should all be like
Right.
considered A-sides, in my opinion. Others, I remember acts like Prince, Elton John came up with this great novelty of having songs that were like unreleased, and people would be like, whoa, man, I got to buy the 45 because you never know what's going to be on the B-side, So
Yeah.
that was kind of another way, or they'd put live tracks perhaps of songs that people were familiar. Have you ever thought of going back and, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, maybe more, maybe less, taking all the B-sides and literally call it, hey, remembering the B-sides, and then redoing those songs you wrote in the 60s and 70s and perhaps beyond, and do them and update them today?
I've never thought about that, but I'm thinking about some of the titles and some of the lyric content is, well, no, I never thought about it.
No. All right, well, there goes that idea. I thought I had a great idea.
Well, it is, because I'm looking at one of the things now. If you're wondering why I can't be found around the places that I used to go, well, I'm hiding out in my love's arms.
Mm-hmm.
They were very story type of
Sure.
material, opposed to the material that people write today.
Right, but with the, especially we talked about the great orchestration and the way you tailored the songs that you've done on the last couple of CDs, most recently Mel Carter Continues. That, I mean, I'm trying to think of a song. What was that one? You Keep Me Hanging On. The Supremes did it. A year later, Vanilla Fudge does a version that you'd be like, that's not the Supremes song, because they took it and they totally took it to a different level altogether. So,
Right. I have a friend, a very good friend, that took some of the Supreme songs and broke them down to pure ballad, and it gives a whole nother texture to the song. It gives a whole nother reading, for you hear the actual meaning of what I think what the writer really meant. Because when you get back in the day, you would caught up into the rhythm of the song, and I don't think you would pay that much attention to what they were saying.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Mel Carter joining us, singer, actor. Mel Carter Continues, the CD. For more information, website mel-carter.com. And good to have Mel back again. Wanted to spend the hour, in addition to talking about the things from the CD and what you've been up to. Love to, because again, even in an hour, sometimes you're trying to cover 4 or 5 decades of a career. It's always very difficult. And then I find with guests that I've had back on, you talk about some of the people maybe they work with, and in your case, really, we didn't spend a lot of time on the acting part of it. And again, I heard you say on another interview that I guess many singers back in those days, 50s, 60s, 70s, acting kind of like came as an offshoot of their singing career. I mean, some were actors who became singers, but then singers who became actors, if they had any proclivity for, knowing how to act or knowing how to kind of conduct themselves in front of a camera and could get into a script, that was only to their benefit. And, I'm sure you would agree.
Well, what the record labels did, that when you were signed and you had a single, you had a hit single, then you would graduate to an album artist. The album artist are the lasting. They felt that when you make an album that you were a lasting artist. And then the natural progression was, if management would take you into the acting field, TV, film, and the commercials. And if you had that talent, you could, easily go through that. But then there were people who were manufactured and made on that. And then if you had that notoriety of being a teenage hit artist, it was only natural for you to go into the visual part of it. That was the acting just came natural.
Right. I mean, you had those teenage idols, for instance, like Ricky Nelson. Of course, he had the added benefit that his dad, a former band leader, had his own television show. So naturally, that
Right.
came kind of as second nature. And, obviously they got a good 14-year run out of it. Not many have that luxury because, again, not every singer has a successful parent or parents that they can kind of, glide into that next phase, So, but now, had you done any, what was your, first stage acting or kind of acting experience? Did you do any, back when you were with the, doing choir work back in the 50s?
Well, I traveled around with, the gospel groups, and when you're in front of an audience, I think the delivery of the music is like an acting experience. Getting the audience to believe the lyric content of the song. That's an acting experience, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the background that helped me in my music, and then it was only natural to go to be on stage, and to be on stage or in front of a camera. It's almost, the difference is that you have to worry about blocking. You know that.
Sure. You heard it before we went on the air.
Spread your lighting.
I was doing my Milton Berle imitation. Do this, don't do that. Oh no, that's right. We can't talk about that now. But no, I know what you mean. It takes a lot of effort to to kind of get things in sync, to make it look as easy or as well done as it should be. And believe me, it's not just take your mark, as I'm sure you would, and just let it rip, or okay, give me a mic and I'll sit down behind this desk and okay, we're just gonna go. Things happen, good and bad, and you just have to roll with it.
I believe that singers, were a certain type of singers. You're actors with a musical accompaniment.
Sure.
Because as an actor, you have to read some lines that are written by somebody else. As a singer, you have to sing songs that are written by somebody else, and you have to make that believable. And when you're on stage singing, certain singers, you have to really reach that audience. You have to make every individual in that audience believe that you're singing, that whatever you're singing about is just for them. And that's the dialogue that you have between two actors. Is I have to make you believe what I'm saying from something that's written by somebody else, and then I have to study and find out what that emotion, how I can make those words believable and make it fit into my character.
Sure, and with acting, play off of one or multiple people.
Yes.
Whereas singing, granted, you have to play off your accompanist or your band or whatever backing you have. But again, yeah, definitely there's some similarities. But a lot of folks don't make the transition. Obviously, people like Crosby, Sinatra back in the day, and then others, and I'm just picking names at random. Tom Jones, Engelbert. Later people. Barry Manilow, whatever, Barry White, that aren't necessarily transitioning in their day into acting.
That and Johnny Mathis. I always thought, as big as Johnny Mathis was and still is,
Sure.
why he never made that transition into the visual aspects of.
And he certainly was multi-talented. I mean, I think he was competing, but I think at the last minute maybe his singing kind of derailed his aspiration. He was supposedly going to be an Olympian on the 1956 team, but I think if I have my story straight, I think probably his career and then probably Columbia probably said, you're a little too busy for that. So but he was like, again, multi-talented in many different ways. But yeah, never saw him do any acting, at least not to my knowledge.
Well, I have to tell you how, and the natural thing of going, from singing going into the act. But what made it happen for me more was that I was the victim of the police choke and hold in a car situation here, mm-hmm. and I was choked to the point I lost my voice for a year and a half.
Wow.
And in terms of singing, but then that pushed me more over into the acting. That's in order to make a living and keep the career going.
Sure.
But I lost the use of my voice for almost 2 years.
Wow. So I'm going to say that probably was somewhere in the maybe 68, 69 that incident occurred?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, that seems to, again, looking at, some of the chronology, that would, where I see more, TV, film type of things going on as opposed to variety shows. And I have to ask, again, I don't recall the show. Of course, it was back in the day, but the Walter Winchell File, was that the first TV work you ever got? I understand you were a parking attendant. Does that role bring back memories?
I remember, I don't remember if that was the first role, but yeah. I do remember the parking attendant.
Yeah.
Back in the day, most of the roles for black artists were policemen or detectives or, like you said, parking attendant.
Now,
but I don't know if that was the first one. I thought it was Marcus Welby.
Oh, no, the Winchell thing was 1958, so, Marcus Welby didn't come along till years later.
Oh.
Yeah,
oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that was the first one.
They must have just stood you up with a cap and said, "Look like you're, look like you're."
You caught me where I wasn't looking at the credits now.
There you go. Yeah, I saw the Marcus Welby, and again, I'm just gonna. We'll get back to that in a minute. We're here with Mel Carter joining us. Return visit from Mel. The CD Mel Carter continues. For more information, mel-carter.com. A little later on, we're going to hear a great track with Mel and his buddy Lenny Welch, who we hope to have on another episode of Studio 411. We wanted to get them both together, but Mel cautioned me. He did do me a favor, though. If I ever need a fill-in host or host, we're going to get the two of them on, and I don't even have to show up because the two of them will just talk for an hour and a half, and we'll have to edit it down to 54 minutes.
Not only that, Lenny has stories. We both have stories about the club over in Kentucky, which was part of the mob. I'll say that.
Yes, no, don't worry. No one's going to show up. As long as you don't have a cigar in your mouth, no one's going to show up. You don't want to look like the cover of the Daily News back in the day. Yeah. Oh, well, let's segue to talk show and variety shows, shall we? Tell me your thoughts on these gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, and some of your experiences back in the day of the talk and variety show. Mr. Regis Philbin, who had an early incarnation. I think he took over when Steve Allen left to go do I Got a Secret back in 64, 65. You did Regis's show. What was Regis like back in the day? And also, you were on Joey Bishop with him as well.
Yes, I was on Joey Bishop with him, and I was on his show as well. And I got to say that one of the Joey Bishop shows I was on with my mom, and my mom and I danced on the show.
Nice.
But I was on both. Well, those shows.
And that was back when
They were great. Just great to be with. They made you comfortable, like you are with me right now. They made you comfortable.
I'm a nervous wreck, Mel. So speak for yourself.
and be yourself, and just be crazy, and like the point was is they set you at ease, so that like a young performer coming on, sometimes you would be tense. Well, they had that knack of making you feel relaxed.
Well, and that's the thing. And I was just talking with someone who we're working on to get on the show at a later date. One of the nicest compliments that I appreciate is when someone says to me off air, whether it's in studio. Usually, it's someone in studio. Where we had one guest on, I'm not going to say who it was, but was so nervous. I mean, it was visibly almost shaking, and I just kept saying to them, what several others had told me. They're like, just act like it's two people, like just having a coffee or a drink, like in a booth somewhere or at a restaurant. And next thing you know, the best compliment I can get is when a guest goes to me and we roll the credits and they're all clear and everything else, and they're like, it's over. And they can't believe that we've done literally, 55-minute show, and then they're like, I told you, it's not that easy, not that difficult, it's just, but thank God she calmed down, because I was afraid we weren't going to get through the show.
Right. But it's great that that you're able to set that the person, the art, or the guest at ease, so that they can give out the information, a lot of information, or when you're all tensed up, things don't come out right.
Oh, yeah.
It's all bogged up, and it just doesn't work.
Reminds me of the old Robert Mitchum story. Robert, who actually was a resident or born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I'm from originally, and he was on a show, I don't know, it was Carson or Cavett, and I think it was Dick Cavett, and he was on there, and he just was a guy that didn't realize that he just gave one-word answers, so it was like yes, no, so it was like, apparently whoever the interviewer was, it was like the longest 25 minutes of their life, and then at the end they go to commercial and he looks at them and he goes, oh, did I do good? So he just had no concept that they just were not expounding on their answers, and and that's probably the worst. That's probably the worst. Let's see now, going to some of the back in the mid 60s when your biggest single came out, Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me. There were a lot of shows, and I know you were on a couple of them. Hollywood a Go-Go, that looked like there was a pretty hip crowd there doing that show.
Yeah, I can't think of the host of that show, because he had several different shows.
Yes, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't think of his name either, but he was a California personality out there. Yeah. Now, did you ever do Lloyd Thaxton?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Lloyd, yeah, who.
Channel 13.
Yeah, and Lloyd was seen here in the New York area on Channel 11, WPIX. I forget if I asked you, did you ever do Clay Cole in New York?
I'm not sure.
No. Okay. All right. Here's one that I have never seen clips of, and I'm blanking on the host. Shivaree, a little-known show that lasted about a year and a half. Who was the host on that show? Do you have any recollection?
I do, and I can't remember. He just passed away about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. It'll come to me.
And he had a big national top 40 radio show as well.
All right, yeah, and I saw some, real.
Right now when somebody asks me things like that, I said, no, the Rolodex is going too fast. But it probably will stop later on, and I'll remember.
But it was just like funny where they came up with these names, like you were on Hullabaloo. Now, I assume did you host the show, or were you just a musical guest?
No, I was a musical guest
Okay.
on Hullabaloo. Most of those shows were done here on the. I've done them several different times because of all the various records.
Right.
I had a hits right in a row, and so I was always coming back, coming back.
Now, Hullabaloo, I was under the impression maybe they did some segments in California. I was under the impression they taped in New York City, no?
No, the shows that we did were out here. We
Oh,
the
okay, yeah.
location that was a show that we did most location with.
And also now, of course, as I told the audience on your last appearance, between like '63 and '81, I mean, you were on several Dick Clark incarnations. Did you ever do Where the Action Is back in the mid '60s?
Yes, we
Yeah.
got out in Santa Monica Beach.
Yeah.
We did a show out on the beach.
Yeah, talk about a labor of love. I mean, I thought Bandstand was a a good production. With that, Where the Action Is, I mean, it was on 5 days a week, especially in the summertime, and it was almost kind of like to give people a feeling of what they missed by not having Bandstand on 5 days a week the way it used to be before they moved to California. And then when
He was a great guy. I was on Bandstand in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay, in '63, right? So
Right.
yeah, just before he went out to the coast. Yeah, it's a shame because I know to me, I mean, in his case, the show went on for another almost 30 plus years as a weekly thing. But back in the Philadelphia days, we had Bunny Gibson, who I think was gone by that time, but she's an actress and was a dancer, Philadelphia dancer who became quite well known. I mean, very, very popular, teen magazines or whatever. And all she was a dancer on the
Yeah.
Dick Clark show. But by being on that show, that propelled her to where she went into the business and became a successful character actress.
He had the knack of making you. He was one of the that making you feel totally at home.
Hmm.
And Dick traveled on the Caravan of Stars.
Yeah.
Like he was in the summertime when we'd go on those caravans. He was right on the bus, and every other night we'd stay in the hotel. He literally spent that time with us,
Yeah.
and I got to applaud him. We remained friends for down to the last.
I mean, I know I saw a clip, again, one of those, like you were saying earlier, one of those where you come across it, and it was actually from his archives. And I digress for a minute. Dick Clark Enterprises, which I think still retains that name, was just sold. Now, you'll love this, Mel. This would have been a good backer for your show. Just was sold for $2 billion to some Japanese outfit.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is amazing what that man built literally from the ground up, and just, but you were on his show as late as the early 80s. And I mean, we showed a clip, I think we still have the clip, we'll pull it up at some point. But I mean, it was great. I mean, he just was a guy that when he needed or he thought someone needed him, I never met the man, unfortunately, but he just seemed like he was there always when people, needed a little push or a little promotion. Amazing talent.
Yeah.
And like yourself, he dabbled a little in acting too, if you recall.
Yes, he did.
But primarily known as the game show host. Steve Allen, we had his musical director Don Trenner, who was Steve's musical director back in the mid '60s. But late '60s, you were on his one of his syndicated shows. Tell me a little bit about the kind of guy he was. A very, very talented, very complex gentleman.
I when I was on the show, a lot of people ask you that, when you're young and an entertainer like that, you're much in awe of the people that you're working with, and the people that you're working with when they know that and they, appreciate you as an artist and a talent. I think he appreciated me because of the fact that he was such a great pianist and that I was in tune as a vocalist with all the people that he was surrounded by. And I think it was a mutual kind of feeling, both of us.
Something I wanted to ask you, and again, we're talking with Mel Carter, singer actor. For more information, mel-carter.com. The CD Mel Carter continues, and we'll listen to a track from that at the tail end of the program. You mentioned to me off air, and we talked at length about the balladeers. You and Lenny, of course, certainly carrying on that tradition. Growing up, or kind of when you think of the term the balladeers, and I'm assuming it's male, although it can be male and female nowadays. Who are some of the ones that stand out to you, either that you admired or that you feel this is the, if I could have only aspired or did aspire to reach these heights? You probably mentioned one earlier in Johnny Mathis, but give me a few others that some perhaps still living, maybe some new ones that are considered balladeers that you look at and say, wow, that they got it right.
Because I sang so high, like I was in tune to the female singers. But if you talk about real balladeers, I thought Billy Eckstine was one. I thought Arthur Prysock was a great balladeer. I thought Johnny Hartman was one of the premier balladeers. Naturally, there was Frank Sinatra. But, I was fascinated by Bing Crosby.
Mm-hmm.
And people would one of I'm getting ahead of myself.
Bing Crosby, you were talking about.
Him, as in the way that he it was so effortless for him to deliver a song. I saw Eddie Fisher once live,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought this man was one of the hardest working men on stage. And I'm not talking about dancing. I'm not talking about movement. I'm talking about just that delivery, and I was amazed.
Well, we discussed when you were on the last time, again, one of the epitome singers, balladeers, whatever, again, that did it all. Your mentor, if I may say, Sam Cooke. What I grew up and always heard about Sam just planted left foot, right foot, and let it rip.
Yeah.
There was no flash. He was like Bobby Darin, but without the hand gestures. Would just sit there, would just stand there or lean or sit, whatever he wanted to do, and would just let it go. And that to me was just, it was, the presence was just, breathtaking. I mean, anyone who could look at that and not say, wow, this guy has really got it going on here.
And that was taken. If you had seen him in a gospel setting,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what we call he killed. He
Yeah.
killed.
Yeah.
But then there was a guy, the most premier balladeer of that I was with, Robert Anderson. And if you hear Robert Anderson, who is a gospel crooner, that's where Sam and a lot of the people got their style and stuff from. At least pieces of it.
Sure.
But I loved Dinah Washington. I loved Sarah Vaughan. I loved Ella Fitzgerald because I could sing that high.
Right.
And without any effort. And but along came Sam when we met. I knew him before I went to L.A. and was on his record label.
I hear you. All right, Mel Carter joining us here for the hour on Studio 411, mel-carter.com. Going through a variety and talk shows. Of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, and again, I'm surprised I only saw one listing, but you'll correct me if I'm wrong, 1972, and I'm assuming that probably was either just on the New York cusp or out in California, The Tonight Show with the great Johnny Carson. Was that New York or was that L.A.?
No, that was L.A.
L.A., okay. So Now that surprises me was that when that song, which we're looking at a photo of the actual 45, ironically, "Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me," written by Harry Noble, for those of you wondering, and produced and arranged by Nick DeCaro, whose name I've seen quite often in my life, but again,
That was
obviously.
that was Nick's first writing assignment.
Oh, really?
First writing assignment, and it's the most recognizable opening of a song, any song that's been out. That string sweep that goes into "Hold Me, Thrill Me."
Yeah.
His first write.
And we're looking at a photo of the actual, what they call the audition record. This was, kind of looks like the actual release, but it just kind of had a white symbol on the old Liberty Records subsidiary Imperial, which again had a lot of people on there back in the '60s. But yeah, Carson. So was that kind of a thing? Did you sit down on the dais, the couch afterwards, or was just basically sing and get your number in and off you go?
I think the first time, well, that because one of the other times Joey Bishop was sitting in for him, but that on that particular one, I sang, just sang.
Very good. We'll talk a little bit about some of the shows you were on, again, some of the great people that you worked with. But now, as far as acting, now again, I'm just going to name a few shows again.
Can I interrupt?
Sure, absolutely.
We were talking before, and you said, "Had I ever done Dinah Shore show?"
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I think John Rodby, who is my conductor and the arranger for all of the songs on Mel Carter.
Yeah, wasn't he Dinah's?
I think he played piano on that show for Dinah.
I think you're right. That's why I knew the name. I just couldn't place where I knew it from. I think he was her musical, pianist or accompanist, at least on the, the Dinah talk show, not the Dinah variety series of the early '60s and '50s. Yeah, Dinah's Place, and then it became just Dinah back then. Yeah. How was she to work with? Very pleasant lady.
Bubbly.
Yeah.
Just naturally bubbly. She very much like she was on camera.
There you go. Well, at least one of us is. Okay. No. Mel is a sweetheart, even off camera. No. Oh, my goodness. All right. Now, some of the TV work you did. Governor and JJ. My goodness. Dan Daly, Joni Summers. Huh? There's some. You mentioned Marcus Welby with Robert Young and a young James Brolin. I mean, were these people that kind of, you worked on the then new Dick Van Dyke Show. I mean, when you did these shows, drama, sitcoms, whatever, Sanford and Son, I think I thought you were on that as well.
Yeah.
Did these people know, hey, Mel, how you doing? Or did they not make the connection because you were there in really another kind of facade as an actor?
No, they didn't. They were. I think Red knew me as artist, a singer. The rest of the people accepted me as the actor, and I got return parts because of the fact that I did very well. I gave to them, and that's the part about being an actor. Like you put it out, and they get it, and it's the exchange between one another that makes it real.
Now, here's a photo. If Dr. Mike, our director, can get a shot of this. This is from the early '80s. This was when Mel, I assume you must have had a new album or CD to plug back then, 1981, circa that time, being interviewed by Mr. Dick Clark himself. Mel looking all sharp in his suit with his vest and just looking real dapper. I just wanted to bring that to the audience attention because again, there's a shot of Dick Clark. Again, as the years go on, people will be like, Dick who? His name is still on top of the Rockin' New Year's Eve, by the way. I just say that. Even though he's no longer hosting it, Dick still is with us.
I know there's some. When you talk to some of the younger people, they don't even know who the Beatles are.
Yes, scary. I know. That's what was it? To digress a minute, I went to see not long ago the film Sully with Tom Hanks, based on the gentleman who
Right.
landed the plane in the on the Hudson there, quite successfully without any loss of life. And granted, I know the first one was 20 some years ago. I was in the presence of a group of young people, and they didn't know who Forrest Gump was. And I said, okay, I'll give them a pass because that was 20 years ago. You know, they probably weren't even born. But what amazed me with all the technology, and I know I sound like a grumpy Gus, but that's fine, is that with all this technology, they did not know that in 10 years or less, since that occurred with Sullenberger, landing the plane on the Hudson, that they did not know who the real life person was. And I'm saying we have all this, you know, the iPhones, the computers, we have this, and I'm like, I just soak all that stuff in like a sponge. But you know what? I guess other people just, I don't know what they're into. But you know, that's for another show.
Well, it just shows you that a lot of people just aren't interested in what's happening, or they don't retain.
I guess, yeah. But I mean,
I mean, we think about it, we can remember things that happened to us like 40, 50 years ago.
Sure.
And it was, they're doing, in my apartment building, they're redoing an apartment for Florence Greenberg, who was the owner of Scepter Records.
Okay. Oh yeah, the Dionne Warwick's label back in the day. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were on the elevator. I was on the elevator with some of the work. I said, "You working hard?" I said, "Yeah, we're back. We're doing this on your floor, just like similar to your apartment." I said, "Yes, I knew a lady that was in that apartment, came out here to stay, and and I said, way before you were born." When I was thinking about it, he's not. I said it was like 40 years ago. He's not 20, you know.
And he remembered or didn't remember?
No, he didn't. He didn't no, because I stopped in the middle of the sentence and I said, I knew I said, "Oh, not to worry. That was before you were born."
Oh, one more point on some of your acting gigs, and I noticed a trend, and I don't know, it just could have been coincidence, but you were saying before about, you know, law enforcement people or medical people, shows like Quincy, Trapper John, Chips, Magnum PI, it's Hunter. It's interesting. You definitely did play people in those kind of genre shows. You know, I noticed now that you mentioned that to me.
No, I can't. Oh,
Plus, you also
never
did a
mind.
great one with David Cassidy called Man Undercover.
David, yeah, I was thinking about that. And
There's a show that's forgettable, I got to tell you. But it was a good paycheck.
he was a teen pop star.
No, I know, but that was after already the Partridge Family, and the show really, I don't think it lasted a year, but it was just, you know, hey, it's a gig, you know, you do the gig, just like if it was a singing gig, you play the club, and as long as you get paid, that's good. But I just, when I saw that, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I said, I hadn't heard about that series as 1979, and Mel was only...
I think one of the guys I had a lot of fun with was Jack Klugman.
Oh, on Quincy, yeah, he's, I've never heard except from perhaps maybe his ex-wife. I've never heard a bad story about Jack Klugman. They said and actually, you did a second show with Jack. Are you aware of that?
Medical show. Yeah, it was a medical show.
You did
and
Quincy MD.
I remember the story when I came in one day, and they had all of these medical terms, and we were, you know, had to get them out like fast. You know, to roll them off. And he said, he took the script and he said, listen, let's take this out, this out, this out. These people are not going to understand what these terminology. And he said, we certainly don't understand by shooting them back and back. So he crossed off.
So he was kind of editing the script and making changes. Good for him. Good for him.
And I think one of the things he liked me because we had comedic timing between the two of us. So I got to do the show, several different times.
That's good. Yeah, no, of course, Jack best known for the Odd Couple, but then hit it quite big with Quincy MD. Now, there's a show listed on here, and I thought it was a Jack Klugman short-lived show, a show called You Again. Was that Jack as well?
I think
Was that
you,
Jack and John Stamos played his kid?
I don't think.
No? Okay. I
I
thought
know it
that
was
was
John
it.
Stamos. I
Yeah.
don't think it was Jack.
Yeah. Oh, okay. No, then I got it mixed up with another show. We're looking at a shot too. I know we showed it the last time you were here of Dick Clark, Caravan of Stars. Again, just phenomenal. Everybody did their 2 or 3 songs. Peter and Gordon, the Drifters, Ian Whitcomb, Jackie DeShannon, the Crystals, Brian Hyland. I mean, a treasure trove of people, many of whom are still with us in one way, shape, or another, and just good stuff. In our remaining moments. Quick answers. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Best advice you ever got from a career standpoint,
The best advice.
other than doing this show?
Okay. You got me on that.
Okay. How do you relax?
Uh, I walk.
Okay.
That's the best thing for me is walking because it clears up my mind and walking early in the morning
There you go.
and power walking.
I was hoping I was going to remember, and we just had this shot come up, and I don't think I asked you the last time. There's a shot here, and we don't have time to dissect who the ladies were, but there's a marvelous shot of you in a tuxedo with the great late Marvin Gaye. Tell me a little bit about Marvin Gaye, because you don't run across a lot of folks that even met Marvin.
Marvin was a great. We became friends when I was at a club. He was at a club called the Cave, and I was at a club called Izzy's up in Canada. And it was like doing the first part of when he was doing the transition from the rock into the nightclub thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to talk back and forth over the phone about how to make it easier or how he could calm himself down, for that. But
Now he, like so many others, I just recently learned Teddy Pendergrass, like Marvin, was actually started out as a drummer and then evolved into the singer. They found, hey man, you can sing, get out here, And I find that amazing that, and some of them had gospel roots. But, Marvin, for a person that's considered such a genius back in his short life, seemed like, not to quote one of his tunes, but seemed like a troubled man.
I don't know that part about him.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that it was the friendliness that we had between each other was because of the fact that he was just entering into that kind of showbiz genre, where making the transition, the same as Sam when he made the transition from the gospel to the going into the nightclub. And I was already in it, so
Right.
there was that conversation that we would have about how to relax, how to really go in and make it happen.
We talked earlier about the track we're going to hear in a few moments from the CD, The Legends of Rock and Roll, along with you and Lenny Welch. But have you given any thought to maybe doing at some point a duet CD, perhaps with some of your idols or some folks that up and coming, or folks that you say, hey, we've known each other for years, we've never worked together before?
Yes, I've thought about that quite a lot, and I've thought about maybe even some of the contemporary people that are out now, if I could get to do a duet with some of them, And I've always wanted to. In the past, I've done things with Martha Reeves. I've done.
I saw a clip of you recently with, I guess,
Peter Plain.
some of the Supremes. Was that a gig that you guys did, or did you actually record something?
They background me in the first stint that I did at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel.
Wow. And was that Mary Wilson or some of the later Supremes?
That was the later Supreme, but I worked with the Supremes in Detroit when I had a record called "I'm Coming Home." It was on the Doris Day's label, and that was way before I came out here.
And Jean Terrell, I bet you, was she one of the ones that you worked with? She was one of the. She took over when Diana Ross left the band.
Well, when I first went to at the Flame Show Bar, I think it was at the Flame Show Bar. That was the original Supreme.
Oh, the first time around, then later on it was the some of the ladies that were there after Diana left. That
Yeah,
for sure.
ladies of the Supreme.
Absolutely. As we're winding down, bucket list trip. Where would you like to go, Mel? If I handed you the money, where have you thought about and have never gone, despite your world travels?
I'd like to go to Sydney, Australia.
There you go. There you go. See, I see an opera house in Mel's future. Here we go. Him and Lenny doing a tour in Australia. There you go. And we just have to find someone to bankroll that puppy. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I had a big commercial that happened there. They took one of the beer commercials they used, "Hold Me, Throw Me This
Nice. There you go. All right.
theme," and I never got a chance to go there, and I wanted.
There you go. Well, Mel, again, we're going to have you back on. Of course, one of my favorites to talk about stuff and just a marvelous career and more to come. And right now, we're going to give the viewers a treat. We're going to listen to a track from Mel Carter Continues. Mel Carter joining us here on Studio 411, mel-carter.com. The Legends of Rock and Roll, a duet with Lenny Welch. Mel, hang in there with us. And again, my thanks for joining us, and we look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you, and thank your audience.
Absolutely. All right, and we thank you for joining us here on Studio 411. Larry Dasilva wishing you the best, and we look forward to having you again with us next time. And here are Mel and Lenny taking it downtown with the Legends of Rock and Roll. Take care.
Those were happier times when we were free in our minds. That's when we became the legends of rock and roll. Some of us may have gone to that great beyond, but the songs that we sang will live on and on. The songs made you happy then, they make you feel good now. We're the legends of rock and roll. Remember when we danced through the night, holding your baby real tight, whispering love talk in her ear. Today on the dance floor, you can't hold her close anymore, and whispering becomes a scream. But we'll go on singing our love songs, putting the magic into your heart. You can keep that rap music, for we're not into that. You can keep the hip-hop hopping, 'cause we don't stand for that. We'd rather sing our love song, for us that's where it's at. We're the legends of rock and roll. Hey, Lenny, talk to me. Back in the day when the balladeers, we used to come out on stage. Oh, yeah. The women would scream and yell and throw their keys and all sorts of things they would throw on stage, and then we would swoop down and pick them up and be glad about it. Amen. But nowadays when they throw stuff on the stage, we swoop down and help me up. Get up. Somebody help me up. Get up. Hey, come on. I got you. Come on and help me up now. I got you. Come on, brother. I got you.